Welcome to the Daily Agenda. Very interesting debate between, it wasn't a debate, was it? An interview. A nice little friendly chat between Liam Tuffs and Steve Laws. So a number of people have asked me in comments what I thought of it. And so I'm not going to spend hours responding to a string of comments with a detailed answer, because I can't just give you a quick off-the-cuff answer, because an interview of that nature deserves much more serious attention than that, I would say. And so that's why I'm going to do this podcast about it tonight. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I suppose it marked, for some people, a new juncture in ethno-nat centre-right relations. Please don't make that mistake. It's nothing of the sort. No, Steve Laws comes from the centre-right originally. And all he's done basically is gone back to the centre-right to have a friendly little chat with them about their ideological differences. But the ideological differences is the nature of what this podcast is about. And so I won't beat around the bush. I'll get to straight to the matter in terms of grading it. Well, let's do it like a scorecard in a boxing match. I'd give it 7-3 to Steve Laws. And I'm not doing that because, I'm a nationalist or ethnonat, which is the buzz phrase these days. I'm doing that for a very specific reason. If Liam Tuffs had been stronger on ideological points and also been a damn sight more honest about what really happened at Crowborough, then I would have scored it at 5-5. But I couldn't possibly do that, and I'll explain why. So let's cover the first issue. So at Crowborough, Liam Tuffs made it look like, he was the organ grinder behind the Crowborough protest, which isn't true at all. Because I know the people who organised the Crowborough protest, and it wasn't Liam Tuffs. He simply lives in Sussex, a few miles further north than Crowborough. Now, Liam basically, I would imagine, wanted to have centre stage at that event. In fact, I know for a fact he did. But Dean Neal was asked to attend that protest and speak there, and he made it perfectly clear, because of his issues with Liam Tuffs, that he couldn't share the same space with him, and explain the reasons why. In fact, I think the exact phrase he said to the organiser was, "If you bring that Liam Tuffs anywhere near me, you'll see what happens." And so that they had to be separated. And what happened was 2/3 of the protesters stayed behind to listen to Dean Neal speak, and Liam Tuffs, I guess, in a baby tantrum. This is how I perceive it, in terms of structural unity, which is what should be happening, but didn't. He took 1/3 of them off and they marched up the road. That's what you saw in that footage, by the so-called auditors, the clickbait merchants who they're just to earn money from clickbait. That's all it is. And Liam Tuffs was only too happy to work with them. In fact, AY audits actually stayed behind to watch Dean Neal speak instead of going with Liam Tuffs. But that's what happened at Crowborough. So, that's one point I had to mark him down for. And I know all about it because I was talking to Dean Neal the whole time before the Crowborough protest and immediately after it. And so, I do know what happened at Crowborough. And of course, I used to live just about 10 miles down the road from there in Pevensey and West Ham, where even there, 10 miles away, people are deeply disturbed about this policy to dump hundreds of illegal migrants in an old army camp, Army Cadet Force base. And so, yes, I do know all about it. Yes, I do know what I'm talking about. And so I had to mark him down for that one, because what he said about Crowborough was disingenuous. It was only half the story. It was the story that Liam Tuffs wanted people to believe, and so therefore it has to be corrected, and I'm here to correct it, because I don't like people giving only half the story. If I didn't know anything about it, then obviously I'd be unwise to the fact and wouldn't be able to comment on it, but I do know what I'm talking about, and therefore I commented on it. I gave him a point, definitely, for his honesty about his own position. And notably because he said he agreed that, legal immigration is worse than illegal immigration, and it's hands up to look at this as a distraction tactic to distract people from the real issue. Sorry, it says globalist hand signals again, for all the paranoid sniffheads out there. You'll just have to get used to them. These things happen. It's called illustrated body language. So yes, and also for saying that no further immigration should take place. And for that, he deserves credit. And in truth, whilst there are fundamental ideological differences between Steve Laws and Liam Tuffs, we also saw the fact, and I'm sure people must have noticed it, that there's not an awful lot of difference between them in many areas as well. And that's the issue with the civ-nats, isn't it? It's because they overlap into traditional nationalism to conduct the imitation game, and then they swim back ideologically into the centre left to spout their anybody can be British, like Lawrence Fox, who had a debate with Steve Laws last year, I think it was, and which he made this absolutely ludicrous statement that Britain could become 95% Africa, but as long as they still spoke English and adopted some of the customs, then they would be English. I mean, this is what we're dealing with the civ-nattery. Civ-nattery is just leftism, quite frankly. And they hate being called leftists. And I've done extensive work on explaining to people why they are ideologically the centre-left, hiding behind flag shagging. In fact, if it wasn't for the patriotic sound bites and the flag shagging, you would see them as just another left-wing group. But that's all part of the smokescreen. But the smokescreen in this interview just didn't work, did it? In any way, shape or form. Because Steve Laws actually nailed him on all the centrifugal issues relating to ethno-nationalism and pinned him down and stuck to his ground and emerged from it creditably, in my opinion. A very clear winner on ideological points, without a doubt. I've also made it perfectly clear why I've marked Liam down on the Crowborough issue and why I marked him up on other issues. And he also deserves to be marked up for conducting a very fair and impartial interview, which is not something that would ever happen to me. I mean, they'd never invite me on there anyway. And we all know why, don't we? Or no, in actual fact, you don't know why. So I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why they'd never invite me onto a show like that, and why I would never accept an invitation there anyway, because it wouldn't be a friendly discussion. No, there'd be teeth flying everywhere. Okay? That's the way it would be. Because people who threaten to kill my 90-year-old mother, threaten to kill me, threaten to rape my former fiancée, Elizabeth Brown, and threaten to dox my 90-year-old mother, don't deserve any form of polite discussion. And they're never going to get any polite discussion from me. I've made my position on these centre-right trash perfectly clear. The only thing I have to offer them is Rule 38. I'm not interested in any polite discussion with the centre-right, particularly Tommy Robinson, Liam Tuffs and all the other scum that swim around in that cesspit. And the same also applies to Fake Farage and his cranks. Because, they've made up some weird and wonderful fairy tales about me as well, haven't they? Yes, he defended Islamic videos online and demanded they stay online in the interest of free speech. No, nothing of that sort has ever happened. Same as the other fancy of, yes, he said NHS maternity nurses, of course, the most emotive issue they could find. He said they should never receive a pay rise of any description. This from the bunch of criminal scum that want to privatise the NHS and flog it off to their American paymasters. Okay? So, in terms of the centre-right, and then there's also the issue of, we robbed £500,000 from UKIP. I've never been a member of UKIP. I despise UKIP, always have done, and never raised funds on their behalf, and that matter was trashed years ago. In fact, it was trashed by Wiltshire police, who investigated this fairy tale and found no evidence to substantiate any of it. Same as they didn't find any of the evidence to substantiate any of their other nasty little fairy tales about cloning someone's phone and taking over their account from another phone. Impossible task, which they admitted. And you see, these people just live in cloud cuckoo land. They're just a nasty bunch of absolute criminal trash, quite frankly. And if you've been on my X feed, and I suggest you go there, it's the Daily Agenda UK, go over there and you'll see all of the material that I published last night about the centre-right, about Gerard Batten and the taking bribes from the Russians, etc., and all the bent coppers they've conspired with over the years to prevent their own prosecution. And it's not just Gerald Batten, it's all the other UKIP MEPs as well. So, as I said, that's a very brief summary, but I've got no time for the centre-right whatsoever, no tolerance of any description. I'm not going to have any friendly discussion with them ever. The only way I regard the centre-right leaders is targets of opportunity. That opportunity comes along, they'll become targets. That's my position on them. So I'm not going to sit in the studio like Steve Laws and have some friendly little chat with Liam Gillett, aka Liam Tuffs. But credit to Liam for actually allowing that to happen, because as I said, it wouldn't happen with me. Though I'd never be invited there anyway, for all the reasons I've just explained, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, quite frankly. But yeah, Steve Laws, he certainly edged it completely on explaining ethnonationalism to him, and left Liam Tuffs almost speechless, I would say, at times, because I think all the civnats were expecting Liam Tuffs to go in there, to go in hard, to go in tough, as in Liam Tuffs. Well, he's not that tough. And frankly, upstage Steve Laws and leave him a quivering wreck, and they'd emerge as the clear victorious side, and that didn't happen at all, did it? No, they emerged as the very clearly defeated side. If you want to put it in the context of victory and defeat, then it went to Steve Laws. But Steve Laws also made a very serious mistake, in truth. The very serious mistake he made was this: they must all go. They all must go. All of them must go. And this is the problem with this Remigration Now campaign, is that they want 100% remigration, but they have not, to my knowledge, and I've not seen it anywhere, drawn up a detailed policy plank to explain to anyone how 100% remigration of non-whites could be achieved, and that includes mixed-race people. I drew up a very detailed policy plank for 95% white supermajority through remigration, and I can explain it in great detail, credible, rational detail, and this is what we're waiting for from Steve Laws. And then, of course, don't wait for for the centre-right to upstage Steve Laws. I mean, Steve Laws has grown considerably over the years. But, they don't have to try and upstage him, because Steve Laws will always upstage himself. You do remember that he mentioned he was on bail at the moment. Well, I know what he's on bail for. I won't tell you what it's about, because that's his business. It's sub judice, and I'll leave him to deal with that. It's his baby. But, the simple truth is Steve has just got this loose cannon mentality, which I feel will always lead him into outbursts of that nature. And it doesn't do nationalism any good, and it certainly doesn't do anyone who follows him any good. And then there's also the plotting and scheming. He's been through more, he's a political prostitute, he's been through more political movements than most backstreet whores have had customers, quite frankly, to put it crudely. And that's something else that concerns me deeply. And it doesn't speak to credibility and somebody who's going to stick around for long. What it speaks to is the ego of Steve Laws. And he, in the words of Kenny Smith, he just wants to be an e-celeb. I think that is true, actually, yeah. He's quite content with his e-celeb status, but I can assure you, having, experienced the tyranny of the law many times, that e-celeb status can be stripped away just like that. Just like that. And I think Mr. Laws, if he carries on the current path that he's been on, is going to experience that. But, all of these people who keep saying, oh, he's this, he's that, he's wonderful, he's the champion, etc. Well, I can tell you this, he's not a serious operator at all. And I'll tell you why he's not a serious operator, because he hasn't yet experienced that very tyranny of the law that I'm talking about. You see, we live in a country governed by an elective dictatorship propped up by instruments of tyranny enacted by the elective dictatorship to maintain its tyrannical status. Steve Laws hasn't experienced any of it. He's experienced some harassment, for want of a better description, from the state. I think most people have now on the right, haven't they? But he's not experienced the real tyranny of the law. I've experienced it, up close and personal many times. Secret court hearings, etc. 2 pairs of handcuffs in the dock, all the curtains drawn, no press, no public, nothing. Nothing at all, no evidence that any hearing ever took place. Okay? And that is the truth of the matter. And that happened in December 2019 at a case which I actually won on a technicality called double jeopardy. And the judge, because he couldn't admit defeat, he had to make it look like he was doing me a favour. This is what they always do. He doesn't do me any favour at all. He just knew perfectly well that if he imposed another sentence on me, I'd have gone to the Court of Appeal and won and overturned his sentence. So there you go. This is the tyranny of the law, and that's only the pinprick of the iceberg. The pinprick of the iceberg in terms of the tyranny of the law I've experienced. And Steve Laws hasn't been subjected to any of it, and that tells me he's not a serious operator. Okay? So whilst you may think this wonderful e-celeb who tweets this and tweets that and has got over 112,000 followers on Twitter, x.com, whatever you want to call it, is the bee's knees, I don't think that. And people who've said to me, oh, you should get Steve Laws on your show. Why? Why should I get Steve Laws on here? And why would I want a Zoomer historian on here? I'm just at a complete loss to understand why I need to imitate what everyone else is doing. And this is what you need to understand about me, is I am not an imitator, I'm an innovator. I'm not here to imitate anyone. If you don't like it, well, there's a thing called unsubscribe and don't watch. Because I'm not going to become what you want me to become. If you want me to become an imitation game operator, you're in the wrong place. It's not going to happen. What you're going to get from me is what you see, and if you don't like it, tough. But you're not going to get imitation. You're going to get the way I do things and nothing else. Okay, it's called the mark of individuality, I guess, of being unique, really, not imitation. So no, I have no intention to ask Steve Laws to come on here. And furthermore, I actually remember, defending Steve Laws last year and and promoting him, only for him to turn around and shit on me. And then he, was centrifugal in wrecking the Homeland Party with his Zoomer brats. And most of those Zoomer brats have now broken away from him. This is the reality of what we're dealing with here. And, just got caught up in the, the hype of an interview with Liam Tuffs. It's not that major of an issue, to be perfectly honest with you, to appear on the Liam Tuffs show. Liam Tuffs exists to make money from his YouTube channel, and I'm perfectly sure he'd be making around about 10 grand a month from the dozen. It is actually a thoroughly impressive podcast, certainly one of the best podcasts on YouTube, without a doubt, because of the great range of guests that he has on there, and also his interviewing style. So, credit to Liam for that. I can't take it away from him. I'm not going to talk these people down in the way that they do with me. I'm bigger than that. I'm better than them. I'm better than all of them. Okay? I won't sink to their level. I can't sink to their level. I don't know how to find it, in actual fact, because I've never been a swamp creature. And that is the simple truth of the matter. And I won't go around shitting on people who've defended me and praised me in the same way as Steve Laws did. Okay? So no, I have no intention of asking Steve Laws to come on the Daily Agenda, nor Zoomer Historian. In fact, I've never had any contact with Zoomer Historian. I don't rate him in the slightest. There you go. I trust that's perfectly clear. But going back to the actual interview itself, yeah, absolutely. Steve Laws did very well, but he failed massively on not being able to explain total remigration. And I've asked him, and he just ignores it. It's just like the centre-right, in actual fact. I ask them questions, they respond by blocking me. Steve hasn't blocked me, he just ignores it. I've asked him to explain remigration, his remigration policy, remigration now, for want of a better description, not later, and which would be preferable, wouldn't it? But this 100% remigration policy and how it would work, and how he would overcome all of the obstacles in the real world to make it happen. I've not received any response from him whatsoever. I don't expect to receive any response from him. So there you go. What is there to discuss? There is absolutely nothing to discuss, is there? But, it's like this. Dozens of people asked me what I thought of the interview. Very interesting. And that's it. And Steve Laws nudged it 7-3, in my opinion. What else can I say? I'm not here to give you a false narrative. So I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you didn't, well, then don't tune in again. It's as simple as that, isn't it? Because all you're ever going to get from me is my unique style of doing things. I'm not going to do anything that remotely smacks of imitation. Okay? I might see you in the next podcast if you're still around. Toodle pip.